So we are now going to be moving into our public hearing, and that will be on House Bill 1098. And I will turn it to Luke to brief us on the legislation.
Thank you, Chair Sen, members of the committee, Luke Wickham, Committee Counsel. And as Chair Sen indicated, House Bill 1098 relates to the duty of clergy to report child abuse and neglect. By way of background, current law requires a number of different people to report child abuse and neglect when the person has reasonable cause to believe that that child has suffered abuse or neglect. And that report is to go to the proper law enforcement agency or the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. These people are often referred to as mandated reporters, and a complete list of those required to report child abuse and neglect are included in the bill analysis. Some examples of mandated reporters include physicians, law enforcement officers, school personnel, and nurses, among many others. A mandated reporter who knowingly fails to make a report is guilty of a gross misdemeanor. House Bill 1098 requires members of the clergy to report child abuse and neglect when that clergy member has reasonable cause to believe that the child has suffered abuse or neglect. And that, again, that report goes to the proper law enforcement agency or the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. Members of the clergy are not required to report that child abuse and neglect under the bill if the information is obtained in the clergy member's professional character as a religious or spiritual advisor, when that information is obtained solely through a confession. So that's the exception to their requirement to report. A fiscal note was received indicating that there could be a small impact to the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, but they expect to be able to absorb that impact. The impact would be in an increase in possible referrals. Local governments also indicated a potential indeterminate increase in that increase in reports as well. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Luke. Now I'd like to welcome the prime sponsor, Representative Wallen.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you very much for hearing the bill. Thank you, Luke, for the excellent briefing. I was surprised to learn that we are one of 7 states. Oh, for the record, Amy Wallen, State Representative, 48th Legislative District. Good morning. We are one of 7 states that does not have our clergy as mandatory reporters of child abuse or neglect. That means that clergy in Washington don't have an obligation to make a report when they suspect abuse, and they're exempt from being examined in court about that information. Our kids need to be supervised today more than ever, but certainly even when I grew up, and maybe you all have some experience with this too, our children are in need of serious protection. It is a fact that vulnerable children can be a target for bad actors, and it is a fact that those actors might seek out children without an obvious safety net. Home is not even always a safe place for children, and even school may not be a safe place. And I just think that kids need a lot of trusted adults in their lives that they feel comfortable speaking with. And when we as adults have a special relationship with kids, then we have a special responsibility and a position of trust in society to take care of them and to prevent them from harm. So this bill, this concept has been around for a while, and I just think it's time that we actually make this part of our law in the state of Washington. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Thanks for bringing this forward. Any questions for the prime sponsor or for staff? Representative Rude.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just clarifying, if I had read the whole bill, I probably would have the answer. But is this mandatory reporting for people that are under 18? Is that the group that we're looking at? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Slick.
Thank you. Just a comment. Thank you for bringing this. I had no idea that this was a group that wasn't mandatory for them to report. So again, thank you, Representative Whalen.
Thank you.
Representative Couture.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I scanned through it, but is the term confession defined in the RCW already?
I might phone a friend here, Representative. Luke?
There is language protecting confessions from discovery in court cases that is defined in statute already. This bill also describes confession and the components of a confession that would be exempted from this mandated reporting requirement. And I'm happy to share that with you.
I'm satisfied. Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
I had some outreach going on with the Catholic Conference, and they're weighing in on the bill shortly, but have indicated in general that they will probably be supportive. So I will follow up with the committee.
Thank you. Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at the definition of clergy or a member of the clergy, does that include other administrative staff of the church or organization? So deacons, other folks who manage operations who would have reason to know similar information around a child?
Luke is.
That's a great question, and it's definitely my intention that the bill would do that.
And there's quite an extensive definition, and Luke is looking at that for specificity.
And I can follow up.
The definition does include a person performing official duties that are recognized as the duties of a member of the clergy under the religion or discipline. It might depend a little bit on what the duties are.
Good question. Great question. Thank you, Representative Ortiz-Self.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification also, Luke, so it doesn't make any reference to paid or unpaid roles, correct? So a youth group leader in a non-paid role is still responsible for carrying these duties. Is that correct?
I don't think there's a distinction in the bill. So
It says whether acting in an individual capacity or as an employee. I don't think there's any, if you're performing those official duties, I don't think it matters whether you're paid or not, if that's the question.
Thank you.
Loving the engagement from the committee. Thank you.
Great questions from this committee.
And important ones. Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing this forward.
Thank you very much for hearing the bill. Good morning.
And moving to public testimony, Representative Cortez, and we have somebody in person, correct? Or they
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, we have one hoping to testify remotely, Cristina De Leon.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm supposed to read a litany of things, but we have one testifier, but just wanted to remind those in the audience that we welcome both in-person and remote testimony. So thank you so much for being with us, and we will continue to have remote and in-person testimony to make sure that we can have the greatest input from our community. So if you are testifying remote, we ask you to turn on your video and your audio when your name is called. And again, Representative Cortez.
Thank you. So yeah, if we could get Cristina De Leon on, she is virtual. Cristina, can you hear us, see us?
Hi, yes, I can. Good morning.
Good morning. Please proceed. Forgot I have to turn on my microphone in order for you to hear me. So thank you.
Okay.
Welcome, and please proceed.
All right. Hi, good morning, representatives. So today I am speaking as a constituent and a board member of the Association of Secular Elected Officials.
Thank you so
ASCO
much.
is,
And I apologize to interrupt. If you could just say your name for the record. Thank you.
absolutely, thank you. My name is Christiana De Leon. I live in Black Diamond, Washington. So I am speaking as a member of the ASCO, which is, among other things, a 501c3 network for elected officials who do not hold theistic or other supernatural beliefs and who seek to govern and advance public policy based on evidence, reason, and compassion. I'm also a former public school employee. During my time as an educator, I understood the tremendous responsibility that comes with being a mandated reporter. Children and other vulnerable individuals should be able to trust the adults who care for them. And tragically, we know that this is not always the case. While we know that mandatory reporting is far from perfect, this system can be a first or even last line of defense for ensuring harm reduction and preventing heart-wrenching, if only stories, especially when it comes to sexual abuse, physical abuse, and emotional and psychological abuse. Mandatory reporting is meant to do the difficult tasks that should be done from an intrinsic desire to do no harm. And unfortunately, we know that this is not always the case either. And this is the stopgap meant to prevent the bystander effect when compassion, doubt, and altruism fail us. I anticipate that religious freedom is being used as a catch-all for allowing disturbing revelations to be provided the safety that impacted human beings would be denied. But for any who fear about what this legislation would do to the culture of their religious community, or that this would be a threat to religious freedom, I implore lawmakers to consider the lifelong effects of religious trauma when those abused children become older and have to continuously process how they should have been able to trust those that ended up failing them the most. I am in favor of this bill, but I do ask that this bill be strengthened to strike the exemption for confessionals and similar activities. To allow a place for abuse to be known is to condone abuse. And to call acknowledging or providing a safe haven for a known abuser sacred or part of a spiritual practice should truly be unconscionable. Continuing to exempt religious activity that can give coverage to abuse is to encourage complicity in the form of silence. Churches and other houses of worship are already being told that they don't need to be responsible tax-paying entities, but the least we can ask them to do is to be responsible for the vulnerable people in their care who look to these institutions for guidance and protection. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you pass this bill with that recommendation under advisement.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. We have a couple questions for staff. Representative Rude.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Luke, is there a penalty for a person that fails to report in the bill?
Yes, there's a crime. It's a gross misdemeanor. Yes.
Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are a lot of people who register online to become clergy to help marry their friends or family and such. Is there a notification process that if they become a member of the clergy or someone who's able to marry someone else, I guess I've not done that. I've not been married, but I've been to weddings. Is there a process of notifying those individuals so they could end up being mandatory reporters by registering and doing that process?
Not currently. The clergy are not currently required to report abuse and neglect in Washington. In other states, I don't know, but it probably depends on each individual religion, whether they include some warning about that, but that's about all that I know.
And many other states have this already as part of their law, and you can register online to be a clergy in many ways. So I'm not sure, but that's something we can definitely look into. I know the definition does include those who register online for this in this legislation. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, Representative Ortiz-Self.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But for clarification, you could be registered as a clergy, but if you are not functioning in that role, it doesn't include you. Is that correct? So if I register as a clergy and marry my friend, but I am not in the role of a youth leader or in any role recognized by the church to be performing those roles, then that would not apply to me. Is that correct?
I do not think that is correct, but let me follow up to be certain. I believe that it's in any if you gather
role.
that information in any context, you are required to report it, regardless of whether it's in the clergy context.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you to the committee and to staff.